FramingPaterno.com is the website, and certainly an eventful week or so here. And touched base with John last week, and happy again to have him back on the program. We always appreciate your getting up early, John. Thank you.
Always good to talk to you, Jeff.
John, let's start with the kind of the breaking stuff here. The letter you received from Jerry Sandusky, and I guess it's now official that 25 settlements have been reached between Penn State and victims and alleged victims of Jerry Sandusky.
Well, yeah, I just released at FramingPaterno.com a letter that I got from Jerry. I had asked Jerry a couple weeks ago if he could respond specifically to questions about some of the most high-profile settlements that Penn State has announced over the last couple of weeks. And he didn't respond exactly the way that I thought that he would, but his response is interesting, and I posted the letter that he sent me at our website, and people can see it there at FramingPaterno.com and decide for themselves what they make of it. I think the most significant part of it from an evidentiary standpoint, and I think this is important to all Penn Staters to understand what's really going on here. All people of State College, all people who care about this story, you got to follow the math, so to speak. And one of the many things I think we've learned because of these settlements is what Penn State's true current intentions are here. And I have been somebody, Jeff, as you know, who has been very much in the camp of panic and incompetence, causing most of the actions and reactions by Penn State here. And I am starting to become into a camp where the intentions are far more nefarious by Penn State. And one of the things that made me start to think that was in these settlements, the very first settlement was with victim number 5. And the real reason that victim number 5 settlement was announced first, I believe, was to set an incredibly negative tone towards the upcoming Spanier, Curley, and Schultz trial, because they announced inexplicably that victim number 5 would get more money than anybody else because his episode allegedly occurred after the McQueary episode and supposedly occurred in the Lash building in August of 2001. Now, if true, that would be extremely troubling, obviously, because it would show that Jerry Sandusky either wasn't warned or didn't heed the warnings that Tim Curley gave him after the McQueary episode. Well, the reality is that that's just factually false and makes no sense and is probably an out lie concocted by victim 5's lawyer. And Jerry addresses that, I think, very succinctly and I think importantly in the letter that you can see at FramingPaterno.com, and shows how that story was changed, the location was changed in a way that doesn't make any sense. And I think the most important part of that is, and I think we've seen this throughout the process, this incredibly long process of the settlements being disclosed publicly in the way that they have, that Penn State is now actively, proactively trying to make it appear as if they are in fact guilty and responsible for all of these victims. They're not only not defending themselves, they are taking a dive, and they are purposely taking a dive on behalf of Graham Spanier and Tim Curley and Gary Schultz and yes, Joe Paterno. And I think there have been devastating consequences to the historical record here and to the truth and to justice by the way Penn State has handled these settlements. Most of these settlements, and it's possible you could argue all of these settlements, are completely bogus because Penn State is not responsible. And in my opinion, there's only two theoretical victims, and really, depending on your definition, that Penn State could even be possibly responsible for, and they are victim 6, the very first victim for the 1998 episode, who has not apparently settled, And victim two, the person from the McQueary episode, who, as you know, and I've stated time and time again, including on the Today Show, has only ever publicly denied allegations of abuse by Jerry Sandusky, and specifically in the shower that night. So this whole thing, I mean, we're living in a bizarre world in this story. It gets stranger and stranger. Just, I'm more Alice in Wonderland every time something occurs. But I now think we're in new territory here. And I think Jerry's letter is interesting, and I think more importantly than Jerry's letter, because I realize that for most people, Jerry has been discredited, though I still think people should take a look at what he has to say, because a lot of it ends up being accurate. The reality is that Penn State is, I believe, nefariously now trying to take responsibility, because the people who are in charge see it in their interest to do that. And those who have let them do it, I believe, are cowards who deserve a lot of the blame for what's going on here.
Who is allowing them to do it? I mean, we're just talking about the board there, John?
Well, the vote was unanimous for these settlements. Now, I am someone who believes in principle, Jeff, as you know, and I do not understand, and no one has explained to me, and I've asked board members to explain this to me, and they have not done it, why it is that board members who are not philosophically aligned with those who fired Joe Paterno and everything that transpired because of this did not at least symbolically vote against this. And I also am completely confused by why it is that, okay, let's say you voted for it, you made a mistake, you didn't realize how it was going to be implemented. I actually understand that. I mean, I'm willing to give a little bit of slack on that, although not much, because this is such a huge issue. Why is it that there have not been board members who know this is wrong? And I'm 100% positive that there are board members, and you, I think, would agree with this, that know that at the very least in the implementation of these settlements has been wrong. Why have there not been statements put out by more than one person? In fact, there haven't been any statements by anybody condemning the implementation of these things, because it is the implementation that I believe has been so corrosive to the truth, the historical record, to justice, and to the future prospects of any chance of exoneration for Joe Paterno or for honoring him in a significant way in the future. And I believe that the trials of Curley, Schultz, and Spanier have been greatly jeopardized because the jury pool has been polluted beyond recognition, because Penn State has created. By the way, this is indisputable. How in the world can Penn State possibly, you had the victim 5 situation, which I believe is important because it shows their mindset, but in a rational world, how does Penn State possibly decide that it's in the best interest of the university to not just settle these cases, but to do it in a fashion that makes this into a 3-week continuing story, instead of settling them all, not announcing anything, waiting till one Friday night, letting it all go, one blast of a news release without any details at all. Boom, it's over. Let's move on. How come that has not happened? The reason that has not happened because it has been on purpose by Penn State, and I believe it is nefarious, and people need to wake up as to what's really going on here and who has allowed it to happen. And it's the whole thing is, it's hard. I keep thinking it's impossible to be outraged by what has happened here. And of course, for people who know me, I'm not even a Penn Stater. I have no connection to Penn State. How Penn Staters have been able to withstand this is beyond me, because it is beyond outrageous.
John, and the problem, as I see it, is that you have a board that is, I think, largely disconnected from its alumni base, largely connected to its lawyers. And at the end of the day, I think right now that is who is running the university. Yes, it's a small group of board members, but I really think it is the lawyers that are running things right now. And at the end of the day, I think that the board members now think that, yep, this puts this behind us. This puts all of the aspersions on to the administrators that were there at the time. And the thing I still have trouble reconciling, I get that it's not their money, it's not coming out of their pockets directly, but it does impact the university that they are in charge of significantly with the financial aspect here.
Right.
And I also don't understand how it is that they, as board members at the time, accept no culpability in this. Because they are, at the very least, they were incompetent in not doing their due diligence, in keeping their eyes and ears on what was happening at the university. And I'm still frustrated by, okay, yep, this ran very deep at Penn State. It ran up to the highest levels. Oh, wait, not the highest levels, just the highest levels over here. I mean, this is the old, this is the bill stops right over there, not here. And I don't understand how they're not held accountable.
Well, your frustration is very understandable, and it's truth based. But see, one of the I've used the Alice in Wonderland upside down world metaphor many times. We now have a situation, and it's snowballed from November of 2011, where there are many people who have a huge incentive to make sure that the university, and when I say the university, I mean in public perception, Penn State or Joe Paterno or the football program, takes full responsibility for what happens, even for things they had absolutely, positively, 100% nothing to do with. Take Matt Sandusky, for heaven's sakes. It is, and this is, I think, people are starting to understand. The reaction I'm seeing is people get the utter absurdity of Matt Sandusky, whose allegation, by the way, doesn't make any sense. It was found under repressed memory therapy. It came many years after he was adopted by his own volition way after these alleged allegations, which, by the way, are fairly benign in what people would consider to be abuse and have nothing to do with Penn State, and he gets probably millions of dollars. It's just, the whole thing is insane, but yet we continue to have nobody have the guts to say what's really going on. And for me, Jeff, I guess the role I play here is that I'm the guy who's too stupid to not play by the normal rules. The rule that they have set up here, which has dictated everything, is you're not allowed to say anything about the victims, right? And so, and because it's academia and because it's political correctness that run amok, and because it's not their money, we have this huge incentive to take responsibility for things that they didn't do and may never even have happened. And it's all, at the center of this is the notion that you can never, ever, ever, ever question a victim. Well, what have we just learned? What have we just learned in the last 2 weeks? We learned that I guess it really was about the money for a lot of these people. They went after a university that had nothing to do with the crimes against them. They've not gone after Jerry Sandusky. That's an important point. Why have none of these people sued Jerry Sandusky? Because there's no money there. They have sued Penn State. Aaron Fisher, victim number one, said publicly during his book tour, I do not blame Penn State. And yet, he's in line for money too. Why? What does that say about his real motivations? I'm sorry. I'm starting to think that this whole case has huge problems in it, from top to bottom, every aspect of it. And I am not a conspiracy guy, but we are now, framing Paterno, I've always said, Jeff, is figurative. It is not literal. But we are now in the realm of literal framing, not just of Joe Paterno, but of the entire university for things that they did not do to protect their own asses in a way that has been allowed to happen because of cowardice, utter cowardice by everybody, and of course the media is complicit in all this.
John, I want to pick up, we need to take a break here. When we come back, I want to pick up on the motivations or possible motivations for these board members, because I do think there's a lot of people trying to figure out exactly why they are handling things or have handled things the way they have to this point. It is 8:51. We'll be back with more with John Ziegler. Again, framingpaterno.com is the website. More with Mr. Ziegler after this. And a few minutes remaining on our Wednesday morning edition, and very pleased to have John Ziegler joining us via the phone line once again. Framingpaterno.com is the website. And John, I'm starting to suspect some nefarious business as well when it comes to some of the board members. When you look at the connections they had with the Second Mile, and the fact that the Second Mile has been left out of pretty much everything from a legal standpoint to this point is also somewhat fascinating. What are you seeing, or what are you suspecting right now in terms of motivations for the board to settle with all of these kids and seemingly, as you said, hold Penn State completely accountable for all of the wrongdoings of Jerry Sandusky, whether or not they had anything to do with Penn State, let alone occurring on the Penn State campus?
Well, I agree with you about the Second Mile somehow escaping culpability here. I mean, every single one of these kids had a connection to the Second Mile. Almost none of them had a connection to Penn State. How in the world this becomes a Penn State story, of course, is bizarre, and it's all because of the original sin of this case, which was by the Board of Trustees, which was to essentially fire Graham Spanier and to literally fire Joe Paterno. Now, I've always believed that that was an act of panic, and that everything that has happened since has been in an effort to try to justify that act of panic. I'm now starting to become closer to what you're saying and thinking, well, wait a minute. This is now going so far and is so dramatic and is so obviously nefarious that there has to be something else going on here. But you have to remember, the board obviously is not autonomous. There are a lot of different factions on the board. There's a new faction on the board, with which I'm very disappointed in the way they've reacted to the settlements. And then the old faction, which has a huge incentive still to this day to blame Penn State, because in blaming Penn State, they only get kudos. The media gives them kudos, right? And the way academia works, everyone's slapping each other on the back that, you did a great job, and there's some sort of PR flack out there, whether it's Lanny Davis or somebody else, telling them this is exactly the right way to handle it. Of course, there are other people, and I have to tell you, I've been very critical of the Paterno family PR response, and I think that they have made a huge mistake. They walked into a trap in this, in embracing the media narrative, in embracing this notion of Jerry Sandusky as hideous monster who was raping boys at the 50-yard line on Saturday afternoons at Beaver Stadium, which is not true, and embracing the entire victims' rights advocacy system, which I believe is not what people think that it is. And by doing all of this, they have checkmated themselves. And they have checkmated themselves by what has happened in the last couple of weeks, and resulting in these settlements that are not justified, which will forever, Jeff, historically record that under Joe Paterno, Penn State was culpable for the crimes of Jerry Sandusky to the tune of $60 million with dozens of victims, and it's just not true. And what is truly motivating, I've spoken to several of the board members. I wish I understood it better. I understand it less almost every day. The only thing I know for sure is I have never seen a story in my life where there has been more cowardice and less courage than this one. And that's how I got involved, because I'm the only one stupid enough to tell you what's really going on here. And what's really going on here stinks to high heaven, and we still need to figure out what the real truth here is, because the truth has gotten lost in all of it.
Well, and as you said, I'm wondering now, because my hope all along was that the Curly Schultz Spanier trials may at least get us closer to that. But I'm not sure now, with as tainted as the pool is likely to be, whether or not we're really going to get much closer anyway to the truth out of those trials.
And they know that, and that's why they're doing this the way that they are, and that's why it's nefarious, and that's why framing is now becoming literal.
John, is the letter that Sandusky posted, is the letter itself being posted at framingpaterno.com?
Yes, the actual letter is posted through a PDF file, and people can see it at framingpaterno.com. It's pretty clear where it is under recent events, and people can take a look at it and decide for themselves what they think. Interestingly, no one is standing up for Penn State here, except oddly enough, publicly, Jerry Sandusky and John Ziegler. And maybe a couple of other people. It's a bizarre world we're living in, but that's where we are with this now.
Well, and that is, at the end of the day, John, that's the craziest thing about this is, and you have a number of alumni that are begging this university to defend itself, and it just refuses to do so.
Well, because of cowardice and political correctness, and at the core of this entire story has been fear. That's how every single step of this story has been motivated by fear and not by truth. And Joe Paterno said he just wanted the truth, and I'm afraid we're going to lose that. And a lot of people have been hoping, as you just said, for the trials to give that to us. And I think they know that that's the best chance for them to be revealed as frauds, and that's why they're doing what they're doing in a way to sabotage that effort. And unfortunately, they might be successful. Let's hope not. I keep fighting. I keep being hopeful.
I'm with you, John. We are flat out of time. We appreciate it.
This is News Radio.